Hey everyone, welcome to week 73. Today is day 4. This is our final day on our rhythm week. So we're going to try to finish strong. Let's see how we do.
Okay, let's get started. This is day 4. This is going to be our 4th day in our rhythm week. And for today, I'm going to try something a little bit different. I think we've been on the pattern as rhythm train for the last 3 days. We've used the more graphic nature of information that we can understand this pattern to speak about rhythm and composition. And that's totally cool. For the last couple of days, I've been talking about how the fact that some of the ways in which we present this repetition may be considered decorative, it doesn't mean that we should equate decorative with a pejorative term when we observe a painting. It is but a formal quality in the painting, and we can use not only that aspect, but, a myriad of other ones to our advantage. Our painting can be constructed upon very simple formal attributes. So it took me a little bit to feel comfortable about using the decorative side of the rhythm that is present in pattern and repetition. And I think yesterday was very liberating. And it's very strange, right? Because how can we say it's liberating when we surrendered control and we had no idea where the painting was going? In the sense that the painting that I thought I was going to paint was one that was very different from the painting I ended up painting. And if you consider painting as result-driven, and what I mean by that is that if you consider that an effective painting, a successful painting, is only that which is able to get as close as it can to an original intent, to a goal that was set at the beginning of the painting, then by that definition, a painting where you stray from that original intent is unsuccessful. It becomes about something else, and in theory, you wouldn't want to be a painter that does that because you're never going to know the painting that you're going to make. And we've talked about how important it is to understand ourselves as directors of our painting, where we can engage with the observer and actually take them along in this ride, where we control the tempo and we control the stages that are being traveled through the painting. But what happens when we surrender control like we did yesterday? Yesterday, my painting became not about the information that was on the shirt, because yesterday I described how it was important for me originally to say shirt, to speak about the idea of shirt, the three-dimensionality of shirt first, and then to subject all this information to that concept of volume. And I didn't do that. At some point, the information that I was going to put over the shirt became so important that it just flattened everything out. Its graphic presence became so overpowering that it made me reassess what I wanted to do with the painting. And you could argue that that's a very dangerous place to be in, because maybe a couple of areas of the painting were done with the initial objective in mind, and then suddenly, midway through the painting, you're changing your mind and you want your painting to be about something else. So you do run the risk of making a very disjointed painting. But I think I was willing to navigate that risk and to be careful about the missteps that I could take along the way. I think, honestly, that every painting runs a risk. There is inherent risk to every single challenge that you put in front of you. It's not as if we can identify a goal and then say, oh, because that goal is clear in my mind, then the road just opens up and it's free of any temptation that is going to drive us away from the path that we have identified. No, every single painting is tough. Every single painting has potholes. In every single painting, you have a chance to be completely disconcerted with what's going on and to lose concentration and misremember what you originally were going to do with that painting. So I don't think this is something that's inherent to changing your mind midway through the painting process. But I have to be honest, that's kind of what happened yesterday. And I guess because the painting was sort of divided into two-ish hemispheres, that because it was obviously separated, because it was the conjunction of these two universes, then it didn't really matter that one of those hemispheres, one of those universes, kind of changed or altered its nature. So I was very happy that I gave myself the chance to just go along for the ride and say, you know what? I'm going to enjoy painting these Tara Booth illustrations. I'm not going to start to believe that there's ownership to those interpretations. No, no, no. They are celebrations. I think yesterday we described it as a very direct love letter to Tara Booth's work. Honestly, it is pretty much fan art. It is us saying, hey, we love what you do. We saw an opportunity for a painting doing this shirt, but it all came back around, and ultimately it was about signaling and celebrating Tara's work. So it was very nice to, lose some of that pseudo sense of control that we think we have over the paintings yesterday. And I think this is what this exercise today is going to be about. It's going to be very different from the other exercises that we've done, in the sense that I think it harkens back to something that I've been doing with my painting for a very long time, even though I haven't executed paintings in that manner also for a very long time. But I think it's latent within my painting. I think the embers are still burning. The fire is still there. There's something there that I have to try and figure out how to materialize nowadays. But the interest is still there. I think I've spoken about this before, but many years ago, I started doing paintings where my subjects were replicating actions. So it was very much like futurism. It was very much Duchamp, the nude descending the staircase. It was about depicting in a single plane a set of actions. And sometimes it was two separate actions. At other times, it was just a subtle variation of the same action. I think it gave me an opportunity, or I found it to be a perfect excuse to just explore more of the totality of a pose or the sense of my subject matter. But during the execution of a painting, I noticed something. And it was something that was, again, very liberating. And this is how we can kind of tie it with the feeling that we had yesterday. I think that painters like myself that are somewhat traditionally trained, we tend to carry this weight on our shoulders, this, Sisyphean naturalist rock on our shoulders. We think we have to be faithful to nature constantly, because it's very hard not to understand that that's almost like a prerequisite when you are somewhat of a naturalist painter, or when you acknowledge that you like to paint from life, or that you respect what you see in nature. And I guess that sense of responsibility that is native to the act of painting from life can sometimes be, I'm going to say, unbearable. I'm just going to come right out and say it. I think that weight is something that can crush you at times. And for me, particularly, it was very evident when I would do portraits. And people don't know this, but I have done for many years official portraits here in Colombia. I'm not very proud of it. I don't enjoy that sort of work. I'm being super, super honest. I think the objective of that work is just to execute a very nice depiction of a painted photograph. And that's about it. You just have to have the ability to portray somebody's best version. And I think you guys know me already. That's not my cup of tea. If anything, I love imperfection. I love the way nature has made us. I love everything that is real and true about us as human beings. It saddens me that we have constructed this version of ourselves where we judge elements that are part of our human nature as flaws. And we tend to be super hard on ourselves. And that leads to us not accepting who we are. And I think that the precipice, the void that is created between who we actually are and the idea of who we think we are, is something that ends up eating us from the inside. So I've always just celebrated how I see people. That, coupled with the fact that I'm kind of heavy-handed, so I don't have that light touch that is very important when you're trying to be a successful traditional portrait painter, that means that I just don't enjoy it. I just really don't think I'm the person for the job. I have done it before, but I just don't really enjoy it. But the sad thing is that I noticed that when I was portraying people in my paintings, these were not commissioned portraits, but when I was, doing my best at portraying the people that would pose for my paintings, I would put pressure on myself to try and be very faithful to those people. I always tell this story, and it happened a long time ago, and my father was just being my father. But I think it points to the essence of, what pains us in this process. I remembered I was doing a painting of my mother. My mother, she was sitting on a chair and she was holding a cup of coffee. And I was, I'm sure, critical of the painting. I'm sure there were things that I didn't like about it, but I can remember feeling somewhat proud of what I had done. And I remember my father came into my room and said, "Oh, that's a very nice painting." And I was like, yes, he can see that this is a cool painting. He can spot the successes in this painting. So I felt very proud of myself. And then immediately after that, he says, "Who is she?" So for me, the drop was just terrible because my ego had inflated. I thought I had done a great job. And then my father, with this simple comment, let me know that he couldn't recognize that I was painting my mother. So that was very disheartening. And I remember feeling like it tore me apart at that moment. And like I said, I think that feeling is at the core of trying to paint somebody and then realizing that you weren't able to just fully understand this human being that's in front of you. You weren't able to get there. And one thing that I know for sure is that measurements don't guarantee likeness. You could be as mechanical as you want. You could just take a photograph of somebody and then project that photo over a surface or transfer that photograph or measure the crap out of that photograph. But I don't think that guarantees that the result is going to feel like the human being that's behind that photograph. And the answer is pretty simple. How many times have we had photographs taken of ourselves that we go like, yeah, I know that that's me, but that doesn't look like me. That doesn't feel like me. That's not a good representation of who I am. So photography and measurements, they don't guarantee anything. They don't guarantee absolutely anything. I think this is something that's a little harder to grasp because I've also seen portraits that totally feel like the person that I know, but look nothing like them. I hope that makes sense because in my mind, it makes sense. So to take this conversation back to when I would repeat my subject matter in a same painting, I think I was doing those things, and I think I've mentioned this before. I think I was doing those things just to try and give myself another shot at painting somebody. It's almost like, okay, I didn't get it in the first try. Let me see if I can get it in the second try. Okay, I didn't get it in the second try. Let me see if I can get it in my third try. In the end, if I had 3 attempts at painting somebody, I always thought, okay, that's actually better than just one because these 3 are giving me a bigger idea, a bigger sense of the human being that's behind. So I would always feel far more comfortable if I gave myself a second chance to do something. But it wasn't about finding that single portrait that would be iconic and with which people could identify that human being. No, I don't care about that. I don't care about understanding subject as icon. I don't think portraiture inherently means putting somebody up in a pedestal and have this painting be the object of adoration. I don't know. I see it just as an opportunity to learn something about that particular person. And if it takes you one shot to learn, something about that human being, great. But if you want to take advantage and have a second and third and fourth attempt at somebody, because that's going to give you a better understanding of that human being, then do it. There's absolutely nothing stopping you from understanding portraiture. Look at Francis Bacon's portraits, for example. The collection of these 3 attempts was supposed to give you a bigger sense than the one that you could achieve with making a single painting. So I think I'm reviving that intent with the 4 attempts at Dani that I'm doing today. And what I'm trying to do also is distill the idea of Dani. So that's why when I understand the heads as being solved, I'm going to cover them up and I'm going to start another one. And I'm going to try to hold on to whatever I learned from the painting that I just executed. And hopefully I'm going to try to let that be the guide for my next painting. So the second painting is going to be based on the first. The third painting is going to be based on the second one. And the fourth painting is going to be based on the third. So it is a process of learning. And initially I thought, well, in the end, it's just going to give me this very simple abstract idea of who Dani is. That's what I expected, but I noticed that it wasn't quite true. I was holding on to very particular things. I was interested in focalized aspects of the painting, and that's what I carried from one painting to the next. So for some reason, I do find this form in her fascinating, but I love Dani's nose. And when I construct a portrait of Dani, I always feel that nose is my anchor. And I think that that's incredibly evident in the efforts that I did today. If it was true for paintings that I had done with her in the past, it was probably going to hold true for today's paintings. So it was really interesting to see how there was a ton of information, particularly information that had to do with features that I was leaving behind. And I started to be very interested in the minutiae present in very specific forms. And I think the transition from one painting to the next was very interesting to see. It's not something that's gradual. Like, I'm not a machine that can do the exact same proportion. So there is going to be misproportion. There are going to be different dimensions also within the portrait and in the size of the head. That's something that I didn't really predict. I thought that I was going to be far more consistent with the representation of Dani's head within the parameters that I had set out for myself, seeing as to how they're all the same. But I think I started not to pay attention to those dimensions, and then answering more to whatever I was holding on to dearly, which obviously meant that that was going to be a center of interest for my paintings. It was really, really nice. I think it's an exercise that can only be possible if we accept and we nurture this idea of repetition, and if we try to not understand repetition as a mechanical act where our only objective is to replicate things consistently. No, but it's the act of repeating something in order to hold on to an essence, or to discover an essence, or to unearth an essence, or to just, reflect upon the things that we hold on to and the things that we let go. And I think that that was a super, super cool exercise. I obviously remembered a show that Clive Smith, he's an incredible painter, that Clive Smith did at Marlborough in New York, where it was about repetition. It was about painting himself every single day, where it was about painting his partner every single day, about the encounter with a model every single week. It was an incredible show. Those images had an enormous impact on how I viewed the act of painting. And I think that they, in many ways, shaped the willingness that I have to try to discover what it means to paint almost like incessantly, to wake up and have this truth that you can depend on every single day, which is that you can sit down and paint. So it is about the repeating forms within a painting, but it's also the repetition inherent to the painting act. I owe all of that to Clive Smith. So that's going to be it for today. I think it was a really nice way to finish this week, because I thought I was heading towards a very specific direction, and I thought today was just going to be an iteration of those things that I had enjoyed. And I told myself, okay, let's step back and let's not look within the formal qualities present in the construction of the painting, but let's think about the painting act, and let's try to recognize repetition in the way we define our painting practice. It threw some things back at me that I think I know about myself and about the way I view, or I understand, or I perceive Dani. So it was really nice. It was very comforting, I'm going to say. That's going to be it for today. That's going to be it for this week. But don't worry, next week we're going to be here. We're going to change it up a little bit. We're going to do a version 2.0 of What Should I Paint? So you guys have sent me a ton of amazing suggestions, and I'm going to paint a bunch of those, and I'm going to try to have a blast doing that. But that's going to be next week. Dani and I, super grateful that you let us be your company, even if it's for a few minutes, Monday through Thursday, these past weeks. And all we ask is that you give us a chance next week to be your company once again. We love you guys. We'll see you next week. Bye.